Hi, Barb. I'm doing well, thank you. Good to see you. It was snowing earlier today. Is it really? Flurry? Yeah. It's a little cold out there.
We have an extra pen down there.
Oh my God, yeah, no.
We can use the sign.
I have
Yeah,
some.
no, we actually can.
Councilmember Stimmel.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Councilmember Strobehn.
Here.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Here.
Thank you.
Next is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the mayor's report. I have just a few items this evening. First of all, I just want to let the council know that Councilmember Boff has received a letter from Clark County Manager Sean Hannessy, which confirms his appointment as a representative of District 2 to the Community Action Advisory Board. The term becomes effective immediately and runs through December 31st, 2020. So I appreciate very much that you applied for that, and looks like you got the appointment, so congratulations.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Yeah, so Doug will be on the Community Action Advisory Board. He's also our representative on the C-Tran Board, and I know Doug is attending quite a few meetings now, different various activities in and around Clark County, so I appreciate it. The next thing I want to mention is this Saturday, March 2nd at 2 p.m., Senator Ann Rivers, along with Representative Brandon Vick and Representative Larry Hoff, will be having a town hall here at the Center City Hall. Again, it's at 2 o'clock, and everybody's welcome to attend. So that's the first town hall that I'm aware of that they've had here in the center.
Yeah, they're doing one in Yakult the same day. I saw it out there, then I saw that article in the Reflector.
Right, yeah. And then the only other item is I will be canceling my town hall for next Wednesday, March 6th, so that I can attend the State of the County address on Wednesday. That's all I have for this evening. I do have one other thing that I want to bring up. And the council may remember when we had our retreat, we didn't quite get through our entire agenda. So I want to talk with the council about their thoughts on when would be a good time to have a work session to continue that, some of the items that we didn't cover. I'm talking with Councilmember Boff earlier. He suggested that we stay in the same weeks that we have our council meetings. Another suggestion I've had is to have it early on a Saturday morning. We could start like 8 o'clock in the morning and budget or schedule a couple hours in the morning and try to come up with an agenda that would meet that time frame and work it that way. So I just wanted to get the council's thoughts on when would be a good time to meet, and I would think we'll probably need to schedule a couple of them here going forward.
I prefer during the week adjunct to a meeting or maybe on Thursday night.
Thursday night?
Yeah, either adjunct to a meeting, we start early like we've done in other work sessions, or the following evening, but Saturday between now and summer is out for me. I'm working every Saturday.
On Saturdays, yeah, I know you're with the
Fix and track,
railroad.
yeah.
Okay.
I have to agree
Any
with
other
Randy on
thoughts?
that. An hour before a meeting works.
Problem with that is it's pretty hard to get any real substantive conversation in an hour. I think, we'll have to budget probably at least a couple of hours or schedule a couple of hours minimum. And then again, I don't want to get into a situation where we don't get through a topic again.
The Tuesday night would work too, if we had to, Tuesday or Thursday.
So a Tuesday or Thursday of the
Yeah.
same week that we have our council meetings, so the off weeks, there won't be any meetings. Does that seem to work?
Yep.
I prefer that.
Wouldn't work for me unless it's after 6.
Unless it's after 6?
Yeah.
Well, okay, would it work like at 6:30 on a Tuesday or a Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we won't schedule any dates right now. I'll just ask staff to send out a doodle poll or
Surprises,
whatever it is.
okay,
And
yeah.
make some, schedule some dates and see what we can come up with. But If that's in agreement with everybody, that's what we'll do.
What was the remaining topic?
Well, it was the questions, basically the goal setting for the
Oh.
council for 2019, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Kind of an important topic, yep.
How many did you want to schedule?
Meetings?
Yeah,
Well, I would think it's probably going to take at least 2,
okay.
maybe more. It's really going to be up to the council how many you want to schedule, but I'm just guessing that it's going to have to be.
Fridays
more than
work.
one. Fridays work as well.
Baseball season's ramping up, so Tuesday, I've already scheduled every Tuesday and Thursday, so I would have Wednesdays
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
You might be in the same boat.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you, yeah. Friday nights would be fine.
I could do Friday night if I had to.
Reluctantly.
Yeah.
I have no social dates on Fridays.
So then the question would be staff, but we'll work through that, okay? Okay. Thank you. The attorney's not, or Dan Kieran, the city attorney's not here this evening. He's absent, excused. So we'll go right into council comments. Councilmember Boff.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for mentioning about my appointment to the CAB organization. The Community Action Advisory Board is a group that makes recommendations about local government funding for basic needs programs. There are 12 members of the organization and 3 people from each of the 4 county districts. There's a community representative, there is a low-income representative, and then an elected official to fill the 3rd spot. So that's how they come up with 12 on that. I'm looking forward to this. It's something different for me. I've never participated in anything quite like it in the past, and that's why I'm looking forward to it. So I hope to learn a lot, and I'll keep everyone posted on what I learn and what's discussed at the meetings and what the outcomes are. Second item, last Thursday, I attended a conference at Clark County College. The title of the topic was Aging in Place, the Future of Transportation. It's very interesting. We gathered together, I guess it was about 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, and it ran until about noon. The conference was hosted by the Clark County Commission on Aging, along with C-Tran, and the Southwest Regional Transportation Council. There were 2 primary speakers, and after each of the speakers had their deliveries, then there was a roundtable or a panel discussion afterwards. The first speaker was Roger Millar, who is Secretary of WashDOT. He had some very interesting comments. He talked about what he calls the silver tsunami, which will hit WashDOT soon. Apparently, WashDOT has a lot of employees who are either at retirement age or rapidly approaching it, and WashDOT is concerned about the people who will be retiring and their ability to train replacement people, not just from a time standpoint, but funding is a major concern that they have. He also talked about infrastructure capacity and the philosophy that WashDOT is taking toward that. He acknowledged that WashDOT is favoring what he calls increasing highway capacity only after alternative methods of transportation are offered to drivers. Long story short, WashDOT would like to see fewer cars on the road and more of us driving or getting around other ways, so they can improve then they'll increase the capacity. Mobility on demand is another thing which WashDOT is considering and looking at. WashDOT seems to feel that mobility on demand will be more cost-effective than building park and rides. Don't know if I agree with that or not. I haven't seen any numbers on it, but they seem to feel that the $50,000 per space cost in a park and ride is more costly than a mobility on demand program. And bottom line, it's all about funding. That was a major concern that he had, and you could say he was just, they're looking for funds, and that's what it boils down to. Another speaker was what's her name? It was Jan Lynett, I believe is how she pronounces her name. And she's with the AARP Public Policy Institute. She's a transportation planner, and she talked about Universal Mobility as a Service, and that was the title of her presentation, offering it as a better convenience than fixed route, they call fixed bus routes. So there's a lot of discussion that way. I think the heaviest question that she brought out was a real basic one that people my age look at, and all of us will be faced with, and that is, how will we get around when we're too old to drive? And it is something to seriously consider. So it's out of that concern that we will begin seeing more and more programs for transportation that are more personalized. A lot of thinking going toward using Lyft or Uber type of systems that would possibly be coordinated through C-Tran. Since she's an outsider, one of the questions that came up at the panel discussion was, how prepared is Clark County and C-Tran ready to go to some of these alternate transportation methods? And some of the panel members thought that we were average. One panel member thought we were kind of falling behind or behind the country as a whole. But as an outsider, she seemed to feel that Clark County is ahead of the average transportation district around the country. So there was some good news that way. The panelists were representatives of C-Tran, Clark County Human Services Council, Clark Public Works, and then the AARP representative. So it's very, very interesting. Some different thoughts as to what we should be doing as we go into the future. And we'll have to take it from there to see how it goes. Eric Eisman, I have to address this comment to you. I don't know if it would have been nice, I think, if someone from the Planning Commission had that time slot available to attend that. There were some good comments there about planning and in terms of streets, sidewalks, accessibility to transportation lines and so forth. So it was quite good. So, okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Very good, thank you, great report. Councilmember Stimmel.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to the city for partnering with the Little League. We got a lot of work done on our workday Saturday. Even better, I didn't have to be there coaching basketball. So, but we have another work day scheduled for Sunday, and we're just thankful that you guys are helping us and working with that. I wanted to mention one thing. Center Little League is hosting the All-Star Tournament this year, which will bring a whole lot of people into the city in the summer following the regular season. And it's causing us to, think more about doing some more field work, getting those fields in order. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the help you guys are doing.
Very good.
Appreciate it. And materials.
Excellent.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
I have nothing today, Mayor, thank you.
Councilmember Strobehn.
I have nothing tonight.
Councilmember Cerveny.
I would just like to remind everybody to share the road and be cautious with the ice and everything that's going on right now. I still see a lot of, what would you say, careless driving. and I leave really early in the morning, so I see it when it's a little precarious out there, and the foolishness that leads to people being in ditches after you go another mile or so. And you kind of shake your head and wonder, why did you do it in the first place? And then the additional work it causes the police department and everybody else involved. So, it's worth mentioning to neighbors and friends to use our brains.
Okay.
Common sense prevail.
Bad weather, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councilmember? Okay. Next, our staff reports. We have 3 staff reports this evening. The first one will be given by Jeff Swanson, and it'll be community development.
See if I can adjust this to accommodate some height here. So thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Jeff Swanson, and I'm the consultant that's working on community and economic development here for the City of La Center. So a brief update on development activities going on in the city. Commercial development, 2 projects are proceeding through the development process. First is the Heritage Building Staff have received building permit plans for a new 8,800 square foot, two-story office and retail building. This is known as Building B on the Heritage site, and it's the third and final phase in that complex, and construction is expected to start later this spring. The La Center Middle School is the other, qualifies as commercial development. The school district is continuing to work on building permit plans, and they're planning to start construction in the summer of this year. On housing, construction of single-family residential homes continues to increase, and it's expected to continue well into 2019. Last year, permits increased from 19 to 58 annually, and today, staff have received 10 single-family residential permits, and 5 are in plan review status this time. Riverside Estates is one of the large subdivisions. Grading and utility work currently under construction there. Staff consultants are working on the post-decision review process to finalize the phasing and the density per phase, the parks, and the multifamily product type, and a possible neighborhood park. Staff may approve the post-decision review subject to a development agreement, which would later be approved by the city council, but all that is very preliminary at this point. Highland Terrace, this subdivision is expected to break ground this year. They will connect to the new pump station in Riverside Estates, and this plat was extended in 2017 and expires in December of 2020. The Holly subdivision public hearing for the annexation will likely occur in February. I'm not sure if that's occurred yet. The developer is currently working on plans for approximately 39 homes. Stevens Hillside Farm, this 86-lot subdivision is expected to break ground this year. The Case subdivision, the first home in that subdivision, is nearly complete. Foothill Estates, the homes are well under construction in phases 1 and 2. And Heritage Country Estates, last year there were 43 building permits in that subdivision. On annexations, Bowling Creek, the 17-acre parcel owned by the La Center School District, that's currently on hold. The Minihan annexation, which is part of Holly, that's 14.37 acres south of Holly Park, and the public hearing will likely occur on March 27th for that. On parks and trails projects, Holly Park irrigation and drainage, the Recreation Conservation Office, or RCO grant, this is to be constructed in 2019. We have a pending RCO grant for the Breezy Creek Trail System, and this would be to acquire an easement south of the elementary school, which would be donated. The appraisal for that is in process at this time. Acquire an additional 2.98 acres across the street from the high school, and appraisal for that is in process, and to construct and extend the Breezy Creek Trail south into Sternwheeler Park. We're working on appraisals to acquire and construct a trail segment along Bowling Creek, and that's a Conservation Futures grant. And Riverside Estates Neighborhood Park, this is development driven, and there's potential there for park impact fee credits. Again, depends on what's ultimately negotiated in a development agreement or whatever instrument facilitates that subdivision development. Holly Subdivision Trail, this is also development driven, and there's potential there for park impact fee credits. In long-term planning, city engineer has modified city engineering standards relating to dark sky at the request of the Planning Commission, and a work session and public hearing will be scheduled on March 13th for that. The city contracted with Berger ABAM to evaluate the city's critical area ordinance for consistency with state law and to make recommendations necessary to maintain compliance with the Growth Management Act. The best available science report is complete, and this document is the basis for the critical area ordinance update. The Planning Commission will consider these changes in March 2019, and I should note that we met this afternoon with the chair of the Planning Commission and talked about a work plan for the Planning Commission through the remainder of this year, And as part of the critical areas update, we also need to do a shoreline master program update, and we're considering adding that on to the scope that the consultant is doing for the critical areas update. So I feel like there are some efficiencies to be gained since the work is relatively similar. Tim and Landing, the mixed-use sub-area plan, we're going to begin scoping that with Eric Eisman, our planning consultant, and street light study for La Center Road is also on the plans for long-term planning. And in terms of other planning commission work, cottage housing, the Tim and Landing scoping, which I just mentioned, accessory dwelling units code, food carts, multi-use trails. There's an interest in looking at the economic impact of multi-use trails in a community. And then site design standards, buffers, landscaping, and aesthetic standards. They're going to get a look. Meanwhile, while that's going on, we'll continue to work through the critical areas update, shoreline master plan, and some changes to Title 18. Down the line, as though that's not enough for the Planning Commission to work on, the City of Ridgefield is heading up a grant-funded effort to do some planning in what's called the Discovery Corridor. Discovery Corridor is an area that's recognized as beginning in Salmon Creek, where I-205 and I-5 come together, and depending on who you ask, up to La Center or as far as Woodland. But it concerns the I-5 system, the land uses adjacent to it, the interchanges, and there's intense interest on the part of WashDOT to see that jurisdictions develop a supporting road network of arterials that parallel that north-south function that I-5 provides. It's not good to continue to intensify land uses along I-5 and rely essentially on that mainline interstate system to circulate those trips. It's not the highest and best use of the freeway. The town center, we have identified La Center's town center as an area of great redevelopment opportunities, and with the acquisition of the TDS building and consolidation of city operations in that building, that will open up some opportunities with the current Public Works building, the old bank building, to repurpose that, as well as a few other city-owned properties that are adjacent to or in the town center. So the idea there is to do a sub-area planning exercise, look at all those land uses, look at the utilization of the land that's currently there, the zoning code, the transportation network, and parking. And we do have a set of development standards for the town center area that are unique, and those could probably use a little refresh as part of this as well. So would anticipate starting that later this year, and that work would continue on into 2020. And of course, working intensely on the I-5 La Center Junction area and the land up there, and so there are likely to be some updates to the sub-area plan that's adopted for that area as we continue to get some feedback from property owners and developers in the area, figure out what needs to be adjusted in that area to facilitate development activity. Planning Commission meets on the 12th for their regular meeting. Other items of interest to the council, East 4th Street widening and Breezy Creek culvert replacement appropriations requests have been submitted for both the Washington State Legislative Capital Budget and Transportation budgets. So we're trying to shake both of those money trees and see if we can get a little bit of budget dust to fall on us to facilitate construction of that project. The TDS building, the tenant improvement planning continues for that. We're actually meeting with the architects again tomorrow. They've been out, have done measurements, and so now they're going to be meeting with each department and looking at space planning requirements. Once they complete this pre-design work, the next phase of work that they will do will be to engineer options for tenant improvements and the phasing of those tenant improvements and costing that out. So there'll be some more decision points to make as they develop that information and develop some concepts. Other than that, have been meeting with Cowlitz Tribe property owners at the junction and in the town center as we continue to gather information about economic opportunities in La Center. And of course, meeting with our jurisdictional partners at the state, county, and interjurisdictional level. So lots going on. Any questions?
Okay, well, thank you. Very good report, Jeff. Yeah, as you say, lots going on. Jeff has been extremely busy since he's come on board. I just want to say again that here a couple weeks ago, we did spend the day up in Olympia. Had a very, very productive day. I look forward to doing that again here real soon. I'm thrilled that we'll be having the town hall here this weekend. Get to spend some more time with our legislators. And yes, we're making some real good inroads and progress there. So I appreciate all your efforts and hard work, and yeah, I'll try to keep up with you the best I can.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good report.
Next, we'll have a report from our finance manager, Dustin Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. The first part of my staff report is actually kind of a fun one because I'm very happy to announce the addition of Laura Martin to the Finance Department as an accountant deputy city clerk. Laura comes to the city with over 15 years of strong accounting finance experience spread across multiple private sector industries. Laura holds a Bachelor of Science with a double major in accounting and business administration from Warner Pacific University. In her spare time, Laura enjoys spending time with family, attending Seahawks and Timbers games, playing soccer, and coaching soccer for the RA Long Lumber Jills. Laura's start date is March 1, 2019, and I'm happy to report that Laura and her family reside in the city of La Center. And she's at the end of the table. So Laura, do you have any comments you have for the council?
Yes, there is something.
Awesome.
Just remember, you have 90 seconds from the time you start.
I talk fast. First of all, I want to thank Justin for introducing me as well as being a mentor as I try to navigate through all the different duties. So thank you. I appreciate it. A little bit about me, for people that don't know me. I have a husband and a 17-year-old, and then we have 6-year-old triplets that are in kindergarten. It's one boy, two girls. 2 boys, 1 girl. We moved to the center in July of 2016. I grew up in Castle Rock, Washington, if everybody knows that. So I love small towns. So when I lived in Vancouver, it was too much for me. So I wanted to go back to a small town. So, and that's where we want to raise our children. So I would be very excited for the opportunity to be able to represent the city that I live in and that I want to raise my children in, that I'm able to help produce the work and keep us moving. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll give it back to Dustin.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Laura. Yeah, no, Laura's going to be a great addition to our team here in La Center, and I would encourage the council members, when they have a few moments, to stop in and visit with Laura. She brings some great skills to the city, and she, like I say, should be a great addition. So congratulations and welcome aboard.
Welcome.
So moving on in my staff report, I wanted to talk a bit about the annual state auditor's office reporting. So finance staff continues to work with Teresa D. Johnson, CPA, staff to complete the required annual state auditor's reports. The city requested the assistance of TDJ to assist during staff vacancy, as well as to provide outside perspective on legacy processes and procedures. The collaboration between TDJ and city staff is being leveraged both to ensure compliance and to find areas to streamline, improve efficiency. During the course of this work, inaccuracies were found in the 2017 submission to the state auditor, and that's related to the debt proceeds and debt services payments for the sewer line extension project. and it's the bond tied to that project. It's required to have a disclosure statement for such bond activities. However, the city submitted general ledger transactions to the state auditor, which led to inaccuracies being inputted into the financial statement, Schedule C, for the city. Schedule C is considered to be it's considered by the state to be the financial statement. It's something that they find really important, so the figures are really critical for us to have accurate. The submissions by the city for 2017 haven't been audited because the city is on a 3-year cycle for audits, so we're scheduled for 2020 to have our other audit. That would include all the submissions for that 3-year period. City staff requested to received approval by the state auditor to revise and resubmit to correct these inaccuracies before the audit cycle. So the city is still on schedule to complete the 2018 reports on time, despite the unforeseen workload of revising all those 2017 submissions. Moving on, I wanted to report a bit about what's called Springbrook Employee Self-Services Module. It's also called ESS for short. I might call it that if I do that accidentally. But the city's current process for timesheet reporting is completed through Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Those are printed, routed through city departments, many times entered 2 to 3 times before they actually get to finance. Then they're entered manually by finance into our accounting system for payroll processing. From that description, you can probably gather that it's cumbersome, it's prone to errors, it's inefficient for staff and approving managers. Several processes were reviewed to streamline the workflow to remove accountability before proposing the solution to the city management team. Now that we have approval from the mayor and the other managers, we're moving forward with the Employee Self-Services module, which is produced by Springbrook. That's our accounting system. It will enable employees to submit leave requests digitally, allow staff to enter hours worked directly into an online system, and the system is accessible on the city network or off the city network, which we found really appealing, especially because we have police officers who are working from their cars. We have staff working in remote locations, so it allows us a lot of flexibility. Leave and timesheet approvals will be completed digitally by supervisors, and city staff will be able to review their own leave balances, access pay stub, and then also payroll documents like W-2s electronically through the system. To add to these benefits, the module will also allow finance to automate manual processes that we currently have in this office. Many spreadsheets, manual calculations, those things will be able to move into an automated system. And that'll improve efficiency, accuracy, and internal controls. The city will also be able to create pay categories specific to employees, which will allow us to log hours spent on certain activities. And that will help us, especially when we're considering activities that are reimbursable through grants and development activities, and also hours that are direct billable, especially when we're considering some shared work we have with the neighboring cities. That will allow us to bill directly. Also will assist us with our sewer fund, which we'll be able to bill direct actual hours to. Overall, it's expected that the ESS module will substantially reduce staff time. Right now, we're estimating 10 hours per pay period, extrapolated out for the year. That's 240 staff hours saved. And time savings for payroll processing hasn't been fully explored, but we expect additional labor hour reductions in this area as well. And we're scheduled for implementation April 1, 2019. I did have a little bit of my staff report about the new city hall, but Jeff already talked about that, so I'm just going to skip over that. But just briefly, talking about funding status, on page 3, you can see a table detailing gambling tax revenues for the city. Gambling tax revenues for January 2019 were $103,651. Revenues for January 2019 are below revenues for January 2018. Mayor, Council, thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have one, Dustin.
Yeah.
What's the cost of that module?
It's the implementation, project management costs are roughly $1,000. The annual license fee is around the same price. So
That's cheap.
yeah, we're looking at a pretty nominal cost for big increase in efficiency and accuracy across the city.
No, it's a good thing. I was just wondering what the cost was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Very good.
Thank you. Good information.
Good report. Thank you, Dustin. So next we have on the agenda one additional staff report. It's actually Matt Jenkins, Public Works Manager, will be introducing one of our other new city employees. And with that, I'll let Matt introduce Mr. Harnan.
Hey, that looks like him.
Jeff actually had a great idea there. Council members, Mayor, I'd like to introduce Jeff Hammond as a new staff member to the La Center wastewater treatment system. Jeff has over 20 years' experience in the operation and maintenance of wastewater facilities, including 11 years as the maintenance supervisor at the City of Vancouver's West Side Marine Park treatment facilities, both when it was operated by Veolia and also when it was operated by CH2M Jacobs. Jeff currently holds a Class 3 wastewater operator license in New York and Washington State, as well as a Utah State drinking water license. He and his family live in Northeast Vancouver, and this didn't make it on the report, but he enjoys fly fishing and also does volunteer work with Boy Scouts.
Very good.
Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Well, hey everybody. I guess I don't know the proper protocols, but this just sprung on me a few minutes ago that I was going to get up here and speak a little bit. But I guess the most basic thing I can say is that I'm real excited to be working here for the City of La Center. My job is to protect the city's assets, keep it in compliance, also monitor the budget and make sure we're doing things effectively and doing all preventative and corrective maintenance and just keep that treatment plant up to snuff and keep us out of trouble. That's about all I really have. Again, I'm really glad to be here, and one thing Matt did leave off is that I'm not from the West. I was born and bred in Long Island, New York, and so I've been out here I've been out west about 20 years, and love the Giants, by the way. So, but I'm just glad to be here. And again, I've been married for 28 years. I have an 18-year-old daughter who's in college, a 16-year-old son who just started driving by himself this week. So my hands are full. And once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I won't let you all down. So thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Are there any questions?
What do you like the plant?
It is beautiful. It's state of the art. It's clean. It's been well maintained, and we're going to keep it that way. So it's a real nice facility.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. and Welcome
Welcome.
aboard. Yeah, again, a great addition to our city team. He comes with some outstanding credentials, great experience, and we're fortunate to have him. So, again, good job, Matt, on finding Jeff, and we look forward to working with you going forward. Appreciate all your efforts. So next on the agenda is citizens' public comment. If anybody would like to address the council, please step up to the podium and give us your name and address. And if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
We're moving 1109 West C Avenue, center of mayor, council, and fellow center folks. I just have a question. Is it Jeff from... So I gathered what you're saying is WashDOT, because we want to develop out there, is worried that we're going to impact I-5 traffic by putting businesses out there. So what they're saying is people who live in Hazeldale are going to drive to La Center to go shopping. Now, if we have some kind of special store out there that there's only one in the state, I could see that, but I don't think they're going to drive out here just to go. I think most of the people using that are going to be the ones on the freeway that stop and pull off, or us folks here who will drive out there for additional services. But we're having enough trouble, and now WashDOT's going, gee, if you folks are going to build out there, you're going to have to build some extra roads to get there. I mean, that's what I interpret, and I don't know if I can ask that legally, but
Yeah.
that's just a question I have.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, appreciate it, Larry. Yeah, as you know, typically we would just ask the staff members to get back to you or bring it up at a later date, but in that question is pertinent and Jeff is here, we'll go ahead and
Cool, thank you.
give them the opportunity to answer that, address it.
Sure, happy to provide a little more context for that. So what they're looking at in terms of the adjacent land uses is it's not just our junction, but all of the interchanges along I-5 and all of the zoning for the land along there. The county just took an action here to lift what's called urban holding on a significant number of acres down around 179. So there's a mix of uses that'll be developed down in that area, including residential, commercial, and light industrial, and some mixed use. So all of those new uses will, when people live there, they'll get to and from the freeway, they'll access services. And so if that process repeats at Ridgefield, at the 502 junction, and I know Ridgefield has an interest in developing the west side of the 502 junction, so as all that occurs over the next several decades, then we have to think, well, is the freeway big enough to support all those trips, right? And so it's this planning in conjunction with all the different jurisdictions that make land use decisions, that make transportation system decisions. Because really, if somebody lives in Ridgefield and wants to access a service that's in La Center or vice versa, there should be some alternatives to getting on the freeway. There should be some frontage roads so that someone doesn't have to get on the freeway. They can get on a parallel route and access the other jurisdictions' services.
Absolutely. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, doesn't it also encompass thinking in a broader scope about safety and emergency responder routes that also have those alternate approaches?
Yeah, it's a system-wide look, and it includes looking at alternative modes of transportation, so they're bicycling and pedestrian elements. It's looking at it all, soup to nuts.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Great.
Alville at 152 West 15th Street. Yeah, we had some snow last week, and I noticed a serious problem again that's resurfaced here in the city of La Center. I was walking down to get my mail, and there was these tracks, and that raccoon track must have been, fully that long. So what are we doing to solve this problem? They're eating your cat food and chicken food and everything else food, Something's got to be done. There's just too many raccoons in town. Thank you.
I saw one
Thank you.
across the street this morning.
You'd think some of these speakers would be running over a couple of them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments for this evening? Okay, seeing no one stepping up to the mic, we'll move on to new business. We do have one presentation this evening by Eric Eisman, our contract city planner. Will be presenting an update on the La Center Municipal Code 18-270-060, temporary need housing. This is a presentation only. There will be no action taken this evening by the council. Mr. Eisman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, citizens. It's good to be back in front of you again. Every now and again, when we do land use planning work, we get the chance to try to solve a problem from one of your citizens. So it comes to our attention, we get a chance to respond to a need that we weren't really paying attention to before, and that's what this topic is all about. So we had a request at the Planning Commission level from a resident of the community, and this is not the first time, where the person has an aging family member or a member of the family who has medical needs and needs some care and assistance. And they'd like to put another dwelling on the property to take care of that relative. And the code doesn't allow us to create an additional house or additional dwelling on those pieces of property. We allow in the city one house per single-family residence, lot rather. And so we can't solve the problem, but it's a need that these people have, and it's a pressing need. And so the Planning Commission, to their credit, was moved by this request and acted very quickly in work session and in public hearing. I did a number of research with other jurisdictions to see how this question is handled. And we came up with a development code proposal that we're going to bring to you on March 27th for action. Essentially what happens is in this code is that residents come forward and say we'd like to have what's called a temporary hardship or temporary need housing. And temporary is the key. It's not a permanent dwelling. It's a dwelling that's put on the site to solve a need for a short term. And when that need no longer exists, then the dwelling has to be removed. So the two classifications of need that the Planning Commission is recommending that we look at are, one is a medical or mental health problem, and the second one is related to age, 62 years of old, related by blood or marriage, and has a income that is 50% or less of the median Clark County income, which that number would be about $34,000 right now as an annual due. If the person meets that test and can provide documentation towards that, then the city would be in a position to issue a permit. And that permit would have some conditions attached to it. One, there'd have to be a house already on the property, because you do these temporary need dwellings to assist somebody who has that need. So you don't want to come from half the way across the town. You want to have a house on that property already. Has to be a residential zone. Has to be a property that's at least 1 acre or larger, is what the Planning Commission is mentioning. So that limits the scope of the use, and because typically you wouldn't be putting a manufactured home next to a new house in one of the existing subdivisions. So these would happen on larger, what we call underdeveloped properties. Once that need is no longer present, as I mentioned, the house would have to be eliminated or removed. The types of units that most jurisdictions use are either manufactured homes, and we're recommending basically the manufactured home size for a single wide, or a stick-built or modular home of the simpler side, about 1,900 square feet. Or some jurisdictions allow RVs. The Planning Commission would say that RV has to have a current license plate, current through the time period that place that is being used, that the utility systems inside of that RV are manufactured, installed, and are operating and are tested, and that it not be a Class B motorhome, pop-up tent trailer, those kinds of things. So those are the uses that would be allowed. To accomplish this, the city would set up a permitting system. We'd do a Type 2 review, which is administrative review. Application, site plan, all utilities would have to be connected and those types of things. And then the use permit would be allowed for 2 years with the ability to extend for another 2 years as the need continues. But as I say, once the need is done, then the property owner has 6 months to remove that accessory or that temporary dwelling. So that's what the Planning Commission is recommending. We'll come to you with a public hearing on March 27th, as I mentioned. But I think the important part of this, and what's the satisfying part for me as a professional planner, is that this proposal is not unusual. Other jurisdictions do it. Counties in particular do it because you're dealing with larger lots. But it's a chance to provide relief to your citizens when they need it the most. And that's my presentation for today. Any questions?
No, I think it's a great, and there's a great need for it. My grandmother, who passed away a couple weeks ago, this is something that could have helped our family. 89 years old with dementia, being able to be at the property and someone to help her constantly that's with the family. This is something that's needed.
Are ADUs typically limited to a couple years or something like that?
Well, accessory dwelling units, ADUs, those are permanent structures. But these are temporary need or temporary hardship, some counties call it, some jurisdictions. So this is, so it's typically, most jurisdictions have a time frame as to how long they're good for. One of the other things that I discovered as I researched this elsewhere is that many jurisdictions also require that the property owner record a covenant on the property that recognizes that this is a temporary dwelling to serve a specific need, and that when that need expires, the temporary dwelling has to be removed as well. There's been some problems in some jurisdictions with enforcement. Clark County, I know, has had that problem. And so that covenant is an acknowledgement by the property owner that we'll take the RV or whatever it is off the property.
It's an acknowledgement, but it still gets into how is it policed.
That is absolutely true.
Would it name the person that's occupying it?
It would not name the person that's occupying it, but the applicant would have to, the permit wouldn't name that person, but we would have to know, particularly if that person is meeting the second category, which is income, age, and marriage by blood, you'd have to know who that person is.
Okay.
And then the other one is for mental or medical health. There has to be a professional, qualified professional who provides the documentation that the care is needed for that person. So the city would know the name of the person, but wouldn't be part of a public.
No, not part of a public document, but such that if that person's need was no longer there, for instance, maybe they passed away, could another person come back? Could that property owner shove another family member in there and keep that dwelling going?
That's a great question. I could see how that could happen.
Maybe like a child who is unemployed.
Again, the purpose of this is to provide relief for a need, and so I guess one could argue that if that need continues, then there's.
Would they just reapply or?
Yeah. So the permit's good for 2 years is what we're proposing. At the end of 2 years, the city says, your permit's up. Do you still have the same need? Demonstrate that the need still exists, and we can renew the permit. That's how many jurisdictions do this.
But it wouldn't be for children. I mean, I think you just mentioned a
But
child, but it has to be 62 years or older.
For the second category, it's 60. That's the income test.
That's the
62.
income part.
Yeah, the
It's the
physical
mental.
or mental health has no age
It's
restriction.
nothing.
Oh.
See, that could
And
be a
that's my
child.
concern is, if you're trying to, I can understand the desire for a family to want to provide that type of a help for a family member that has a mental health problem, but how do you go about monitoring or truly providing the assistance to that individual when they're in a completely different dwelling?
How do you do that?
I'm a little lost as to how this is truly helping that individual.
If there's a permanent dwelling on site and it's occupied by.
But if they have a medical situation or a mental health situation, who's helping them?
Where I see this, it's the residents of the dwelling itself are providing that sort of family care as opposed to health care.
Then why aren't they in the house?
The house often doesn't have the room. Is what. If you, prior to the hearing, if you want us to consider, want me to consider making some potential amendments, I'd be happy to consider that between now and March 27th.
I mean, and I work in a food bank. I deal with mental health issues every day. And so putting them outside of the home where the major family unit is does not necessarily lead to providing them with the level of assistance that they need, is the struggle that I'm having here. It's how, if they have a full-time caretaker, if that's part of this,
The caretaker
the
could
language,
be a part of this, yes.
then that would give me more.
So one,
Less concern.
as I've researched this, in some situations I've seen where the caretaker lives in the temporary dwelling and takes care of the aged person who's having mental problems.
And if that's clearly outlined in this situation, then I guess that's easier to understand or easier to manage as a municipality, other than just leaving it totally vague. I mean, I wouldn't want to see us enter into a city code that allows people to put a family member that's either ailing or has a mental disability that they no longer want to deal with, because I see that on a regular basis, in a separate home on the same property, but no guidance or no real assistance.
So are you suggesting, I'm just trying to think this through, are you suggesting that in those situations where there's mental or medical health needs, that there should be a professional on living in one of the units?
I don't know that I don't know what brought this to us, what the story was, and I'm not trying to get into anybody's private life, but I'm just saying from the opposite spectrum of working in a food bank where I see these kinds of situations where a mental health individual that has mental health issues or has medical issues that the family no longer wants to have to deal with. And that's a hard thing to really, wrap your brain about, but it happens. And so we've got these individuals that are out there with mental health issues that the family no longer wants to deal with, so they're out there. And if this is a family's way of trying to say that they're providing assistance, but they're putting them in a mobile home, even though it's on the same property, that to me is not really caring for them. That's just giving them a roof over their head.
Anecdotally, the way that this latest version came to us, which caused the Planning Commission to act, was a resident who has an aging parent who's no longer able to take care of themselves. And so they want to bring the mother down to live in a temporary dwelling right next door so that they can provide care for the aging mother.
Sometimes people don't need full medical assistance, but their hardship that they can't take care of a lot of things on their own, they're still able to live to a point by themselves. And something like that helps a family, because putting them into a home of some sort, runs $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, even with subsidies. So something like this is what that would enact and able to assist families to do. Like in my situation, it was exactly that. As she progressed and got worse with the dementia, where she wasn't, army men were attacking the house at that point, that's when you have to make that move inside. The problem is that some of the houses and the dwellings that you live in can't bring another person in, or that person is so disabled they can't get up the stairs if there's bathroom needs in that aspect.
Right.
So you need those leveled areas for these people to live in, and that would be a big help, But as they get worse in their illness or mental state, then they need that 24/7 care right there inside. But I do see a need in what he's saying.
7:30 p.m.
This brought up an interesting thought in my mind. When I read this, I was thinking the same thing like Tom's situation. The need for elder care, which ultimately turns into memory care. I've gone through it. I know that there are others in this room tonight that are experiencing the same thing, having to care for an aging parent. And I think we need to have a program like this to allow this kind of situation. But what has been brought up, it hadn't occurred to me that if you do run into some mental health issues, I guess it's really not an issue until it affects the surrounding neighborhood. And I'm just thinking out loud right now, but I would think that if a permit is valid for 2 years, subject to renewal, that at the end of the 2-year period, that we should take into consideration if there are any police reports, for example. You have any kind of information telling us that maybe this is not good for the neighborhood. And maybe we should be in a position to be able to even deny a renewal if there have been problems. I don't have the answer to it, but I'm just thinking out loud right now. Maybe we need to consider something like
Pose the
that.
question to the chief and see how he would handle that. You have any thoughts on that, chief?
You don't want to go down.
These situations are very delicate. We deal with it quite often, and people think that they're capable of handling either loved ones or what have you, with mental illness or other conditions, and it generally doesn't work out very well without having alternative care for them. They walk away, they leave the home, especially with these types of situations when they're not in the home themselves. If they have access to come and go as they please. So we deal with that a lot, and it's unfortunate. So.
Do you deal with that whether it's an accessory unit or it's
Either or.
the owner of the property?
You know, they can't be there 24/7 usually. They try to take care of the family member. However, they have to go to work. They have to go to the shopping or whatever the case may be. They leave them behind, and the next thing you know, they're leaving the home on their own accord. So there's issues. The problem with mobile homes and other RVs that we've had in the past is they aren't conducive to ADA accessibility. There's falls that occur because of the steps in those types of units, step ups into the residence itself, step downs, those types of things. So it depends on what kind of structures are going to be put on the property as well.
And I don't want to be overly critical here. It was just in my first reading of this, it seemed as if it was quickly put together for one particular type of situation. It didn't give me a sense of helping the broader group of people that would be impacted by this. And it's just at our level, we have to look at things long-term. What is the potential for how this is going to be used? And are we taking the right steps to help those people? I don't want to, give the impression that I don't want to support that because I'm dealing with parents that are in the same situation. I'm dealing with it in a long-distance situation. And, I understand it completely. But at the same token, let's do it right so that it works and that we encompass all of that being thought out rather than just one individual coming forward to us and wanting it done for their needs.
Are you suggesting not to have a public hearing in March then?
I'm not real comfortable with the way this is written, but I don't yet have positive comments to make either. It just doesn't seem like it's fully fleshed out.
Okay.
And I don't want to...
That doesn't tell me what...
I know, it doesn't give you any direction. It's just, I think I have concern about how it's policed, and policing is the wrong word. It's just we're setting ourselves up for a lot of follow-up over time. Who does that? What is how many extensions are we going to be dealing with? Is there some type of parameter that we should be looking at? And, as Councilman Boff brought up, at what point do we look at it in terms of a bigger concept of how many police calls, and do we need to really also be contacting the entire family to have some sort of conference about, is this the best care that we can give this individual? I know it's not our job, but in a small community, how do we look at this with eyes wide open and hearts open at the same time?
Yeah, but
It's hard.
But what you're saying is that even if there was no dwelling, there's people that are going to be moving in there, so we still have to do the same type of thing, right? I mean, the police is still going to show up if there's no dwelling.
I understand that, but it looks
so-
like we're setting it up for one additional layer of policing to be involved because we're moving on an entirely new dwelling unit, and who's going to be the one that goes in there and says, okay, now you've got to take it up, because then it becomes not only police issue, but also public works issue in terms of, you know, what happened.
Yeah, okay, I can see that part.
A lot of these things, if they get left alone and they're vacant, and as people get age, they're not capable of taking care of their property. And so if you have these external structures that aren't removed from the property, homeless people are going to take opportunities where they exist. And those types of things usually get taken over, or you get burglarized, and that type of thing. So I guess long-term, it's a code enforcement issue that's huge, that has to do with it. Because that's what generally happens. Things get run down, properties get engaged in different acts. Kids or whatever utilize those, things that aren't being looked after.
But how is that any different than the 60-year-old man that has a farm that's right outside here on an acre with a barn that's kind of deteriorating? It's the same concept, right? I mean, you're still going to have kids that may be breaking in. They're homeless, may want to jump in there to sleep. So to me, I'm not seeing a difference in between it being a...
You're moving that into a residential neighborhood.
On
So
one
the
acre
property-
parcels.
1 acre parcels. These
But
are
the
neighborhood
property still,
parcels.
neighboring property owners are still going to be impacted in terms of how many calls, as well as what their property value is going to be assessed in terms of if that additional dwelling unit starts becoming deteriorated, who's going to manage that?
How many 1 acre parcels do we have within the city limits?
Less than, most of them are on the other side of the river. And there are almost all of the parcels on the other side, except for right around Timber Landing, are larger than 1 acre. On this side of the river, there are fewer than 20. They're undeveloped, and they're all subject to they're all targets for redevelopment subdivisions.
And those aren't like you say homes that have HOAs that we're going to restrict in.
Well, actually, the one that precipitated this, not the only time it's come forward, but the one that precipitated this one is in a neighborhood. It was a 5-acre subdivision that the county planted many years ago, and the HOA, the owners of the property who requested this, petitioned their HOA and got the support of all of the property owners.
Does Eric, I'm sorry, I didn't read through this completely, I glanced at it, got interrupted. Does it require that the utility connections are permitted and inspected?
Yes.
Specifically septic?
All of the utilities would have to be permitted and inspected. They have to meet the city code.
Okay, because I lived in an RV for a long time, and in a different environment down in LA, and I know that I've seen some pretty marginal septic connections in some of the places that I parked in. I was traveling a lot, so I didn't need a big house.
These are not hoses running out there.
So do the fees cover the inspections and stuff like that, or is that something that we can put in there to cover some of the expense of
There would be
this?
basically the fee, it's not a building permit per se, we thought about this, more of a mobile or manufactured home replacement permit. And so those are the fees that are paid. I don't recall off the top of my head what that fee is, but there's a fee scheduled in the city for a manufactured home replacement.
It would be
So that-
nice to see something to be able to cover some of those expenses, especially if we're having to go back out there 6 months later just to inspect things and make sure things are good. You know, that might be some language to put in there.
Yeah, inspection.
Per what the chief mentioned, do we have any responsibility if the applicant says it's for a person who is disabled, that the dwelling is ADA accessible? Because I don't know much in the way of RVs that are ADA accessible.
No, that's absolutely true. This code doesn't address the ADA. If it was to be used for that purposes and it was a modular home, it would most likely have to meet ADA requirements, but manufactured homes, no.
So if somebody said that I want to put my grandma out there with, and she's in a wheelchair, but it's a non-ADA accessible coach, or RV or whatever they're going to use, do we have any responsibility for that? In other words, would we be accepting responsibility allowing something that isn't compliant?
That's a great leave
May
it
I
alone.
say something
don't know
on
the
that?
answer. Look, just think for just a second, and I guess what we would have to, we could, and to put more flesh on this, we could require that if it is a dwelling, temporary dwelling that's added to accommodate disabilities related to the Americans with Disabilities Act, that it comply with those standards.
Yeah. I've never seen a RV with a 3-foot door.
No. So I'm sorry. Mr.
Yeah. No, reflecting back when I was working on the cottage housing project, I got involved with some ADA issues.
Yes.
And I learned at that point that the ADA requirements do not apply to single-family residences unless it's a government-sponsored project of some sort.
Thank you.
So would the council like to see this brought forward for consideration on the March 27th? Was it March 27th, Eric, that we were going to bring this
Yes.
forward?
I think with respect to Liz's questions and such, maybe we should have a session beforehand or something that we can discuss, questions or something? Is
Well,
that,
we could have another work session on it, or are we suggesting maybe the planning commission could take a look at this and review some of the topics or some of the issues we talked about here, or?
We didn't really give him any
What,
workable topics.
Well, what would you suggest, Eric? I guess we have to, it doesn't seem like we have a consensus here. Yeah,
At least from what I've been
Right.
hearing.
and I don't know how we're going to get to that point.
We have support, but we just have concern.
Another work session?
So we could schedule another work session with the council where we just sit down and try to hammer out the code language. I'd be happy to do that. And if you could bring your concerns ahead of time, it would give me a chance to think about how I could address those.
What other codes did we look at?
I looked at Clark County, I looked at Skamania County, I looked at the city of Eugene, I looked at the city of Springfield, I looked at Pierce County, I looked at sort of like Silverton, Oregon. So I tried to find some towns. Pacific County, I looked at theirs because I was looking for smaller jurisdictions.
Yeah, smaller communities would be
I would-
my
I would-
thought too.
I would think towns would be better, or towns or cities would be better than counties, because I know that when we drive out the back part of Clark County, it gets pretty hokey out there towards Amboy-Yackle
Well, I was
on
just
some of the
thinking,
dwellings.
Most of the temporary hardship or temporary need codes that I examined are in counties. Because there's the land to put them. And cities that are underdeveloped, if you will, or just beginning to develop, those are the ones that seem to have more room for this, and that's where I found those codes.
I was just thinking in terms of relating to the impact on public works and the police department if
Should we have
communities
a-
our size.
Should we have a joint work session with planning commission prior to one of our meetings? You know, like for an hour, have an overlap?
Well, we're going to have a presentation at the next city council meeting by one of the planning commissioners and Mr. Eisman on dark skies, but we don't have a work session scheduled yet. You know, this is actually a very hotly
I wouldn't think it'd work.
discussed
would it?
topic right now throughout the state, not just this particular topic, but accessory dwelling units. I mean,
Yeah.
the state is really, we're confronted with a housing shortage, and especially affordable housing. So this is actually one of the ways that that's being addressed, and it's really being encouraged by, you know, many different agencies throughout the state to address this very problem. So it's even a little bit more complex and complicated than what we're dealing with here this evening, just on the temporary needs housing. And that's one of the topics that the planning commission is going to address going forward, is the accessory dwelling units. So again, you know, the purpose of this was really to address a specific, in part, to address a specific need, and timing is critical. So I would like to move this.
This is a good conversation.
Yeah. But what we can do is we can schedule a city council work session. I don't know that we'll be able to do it at the next city council meeting because we already have one scheduled, but we could do it on the 27th. And again, I would encourage the council members to email Mr. Eisman with any thoughts or concerns that they have, so he can begin to address those issues and be better prepared to answer the questions at our next meeting, next time we bring this up. Does that work for the council?
Sure.
Work session, not a hearing on the 27th.
Does that work? Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Mayor, you mentioned a work session at the next meeting. Are we meeting earlier?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to put that on my calendar.
Yeah, we'll get it noticed, but yeah, we'll have, at the next city council meeting, we'll have a work session prior to the
5:30 then?
5:30, yeah, it'll be for dark skies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Eisman and council. That concludes our meeting for this evening. That's all we have on the agenda. So with that, if I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Appreciate it.